So the Highlanders 2018 season, yeah, probably not going to be totally satisfying for Highlanders fans at the end of the day, the way things ended up. Season itself, 10 wins, 6 losses, good enough for 6th overall on the table. New coach, a few new players, some big guys to replace, and I think overall you'd have to say the Highlanders did a pretty decent job. Still room for improvement next year without a doubt, but yeah, I mean, sitting here as a Blues fan, I can only look at this Highlanders team with envy for the job they did in 2018. Start with the good. How did they go? They had a very... I mean, they have had for a few years a pretty distinct kind of game plan, the Highlanders. They're not a team that runs out and dominates possession and kind of grinds teams into the ground. They're pretty famed for their kind of counter-attacking play, being happy to kick the ball, tackle teams until they get a turnover and then just cut them to bits in kind of broken play. And a lot of that's reflected in their stats. I mean, they're the number one team at getting over the advantage line. I would say largely because often when they are attacking teams, it is in a situation where they're perhaps not best prepared for defending. They're number 4 for offloads, which is good, keeps them with the ball alive to take the best chance of those opportunities. They are the number 1 team for making tackles. Now you can look at that as a bad stat. Like if we're the number 1 team for average tackles made per game, it means the opposition's got the ball and we're having to be on the back foot. But like I said, that's kind of the way the Highlanders have just set up their strategy. Aaron Major did talk a little bit this season about wanting to get more possession and not always playing on the counter, but I mean, if it's just for stats that he's worried about, then I'm not sure if he should be too fussed. Obviously, he's looking at changing the overall strategy of their team and thinks he can get results another way. Then that's kind of up to him. But 4th overall for missed tackles, I guess. It kind of goes hand in hand with if you're going to make lots of tackles, there's more potential to miss tackles. I wouldn't have thought the Highlanders, despite that stat, are a hugely kind of missed tackle team. Their defense is generally pretty sound. 11th overall for conceding the advantage line. So most of the time when teams were attacking them, they were able to kind of stop them from getting too much go-forward ball. So yeah, most of that kind of stuff looks pretty good. Again, a lot of it is stats, but the way the Highlanders play do put them at the kind of the bad end of some of these areas. Like run meters, they are 13th, but like I said, they're not trying to run you into the ground. They're going to hit you on the counter. So to balance that out, they're 4th for kick meters. So that kind of makes sense. They're going to kick the ball back to you. They're 13th overall for going 7+ phases. Kind of meets the strategy. 13th for tackle busts. I guess it could be to do with having less ball than some other times. Now, where it does get a little bit concerning is their set piece. Obviously, their scrum at times came under pressure this season, but also line-out win percentage of their own ball, dead last. 15th team. And they're not without some pretty decent locks, so that's and loose forwards, so that's a bit concerning. 11th overall for winning opposition lineout. So that puts them in the bottom 5 for both lineout kind of categories that we look at. Yeah, that I would say more than the other things is probably an area that they should be looking at along with the scrum. Not to say the scrum was always bad. It's just in some games it was kind of exposed. 3rd for conceding run meters. So whilst they are good at stopping guys from getting over the advantage line, eventually they will concede run meters. Again, perhaps to do with the other team having more possession. And 4th for line breaks conceded, which is a concerning one because although you don't have the ball, you want to tackle them into the ground, eventually you want to turn the ball over. If you're going to concede a line break, then you're going to be in big trouble. So yeah, Asapoanga's handling error is obviously another issue. The Highlanders not that great in terms of their handling this season, but I mean, when you are the team who's 4th overall for offloads and trying to play quick, it kind of goes with the territory. So yeah, the stats can be a bit misleading here, but what I would take from this is they need to improve their line out, their scrum, and then they'll be looking a whole lot better for next season. Plus, whoever the number 10 is needs to drop the ball slightly less. Highlights of this season, you'd have to say, obviously, they were unbeaten at Forsyth Bar. Won 7 from 7. They beat the Crusaders there, who ended up being the champions. They beat them 25-17. They beat the Lions there, who were the other finalists. They beat them 39-27. They beat the Hurricanes there. They beat the Chiefs there. A lot of teams who made the playoffs couldn't get over the Highlanders at Forsyth Bar. They did lose one home game, but it was that game in Fiji, which you would have to say is one of the lowlights, because the Chiefs just ran riot early in that game. They ended up finishing, 40 points to something. So yeah, 45-22. It's a decent second half from the Highlanders, but they really let that first half slip. In terms of other lowlights, you'd have to say the 2 games against the Waratahs. The first one they lost in week 14, 41-12. Obviously, Nabura got sent off for kind of a kung fu kick in that game, but it was big news here in New Zealand because they were the first New Zealand team to get beaten by an Australian team in a long time, even though other results would go Australian teams' way this season. That was the first one. And ultimately, that quarterfinal, they lost at 30 points to 23 again against the Waratahs and blew a pretty comfortable lead. So, yeah, as a Highlanders, if I was a Highlanders supporter, that's what I would be pretty bitter about, that my team weren't able to kind of get over the line in that game. I suppose when you're looking at their away form, because they did win those 7 games at home, they had 10 victories overall, so they had 3 away victories. But when you look at who they beat away, it was the Bulls, who finished 12th, the Reds, who finished 13th, and the Blues, who finished 14th. The only 3 teams that the Highlanders were able to do the job over away from home, teams who finished 12th, 13th and 14th. So get your line out right, get your scrum solid, start working on those away performances, and you'll be pretty much, imagine if the Highlanders had a home quarterfinal. With that record, would you back many teams to beat them? Imagine if they had a home semi-final. Imagine if they had a home final. I know there's a long way to go before you can get there, but 7 from 7 at Forsyth Bar this season is it's a pretty impressive record that some teams can match, but not all, far from all. Next season, you got to look at the team and say, well, the core of the team is still going to be there. Coltman, Hemopo, Hunt, Lynches, Luke Whitelock, Squire, Aaron Smith, Thompson and Walden, who really filled that midfield out well after Fekitoa left. Naholo, who was their leading try-scoring man, who got 10 tries this season, number 1 guy for the Highlanders by far. Probably could use another winger to go with Naholo, because it's like Tavita Lee and other players kind of switch in on that left wing, but Naholo is far and away the best winger they've got. Ben Smith's back. Aaron Major's obviously back for another season as coach. Key man they're losing is Lima Sopoaga. All Black, kind of third choice guy. Decided he doesn't want to play third choice, so he's leaving. He's going to Wasps. They are getting in Bryn Gatland, who's had a wee bit of time for the Blues this season, kind of on and off. Played against the British and Irish Lions when they were here and played pretty decent. So whether the Highlanders can turn him into gold kind of remains to be seen. They've got a knack for doing that. Well, to be fair, a lot of teams have got a knack for turning Blues players into gold, but especially the Highlanders. So yes, there's definitely some work-ons, but man, there's still a whole lot of potential there. Like, it doesn't seem like the list of things to get right don't seem that long, and then the potential improvement you could get from getting that right seems to be pretty massive. So yeah, if I was a Highlanders fan, I'd be pretty optimistic about how things are looking. I'm not sure about that green away jersey still. Saw some highlights the other day of a game, and it's still not my cup of tea. Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts on how you thought the Highlanders went, how you think they're perhaps going to go next season, how you think, obviously, Bryn Gatland at number 10 will go, because they've had Sopoaga for so long. It's going to be a massive change. I did hear some rumours about Quade Cooper going to the Highlanders, but I can't quite see that happening. Who knows? But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.